I tell people you're going to have an abundance of emotions every single day. Choose for them to be good. When you get, when things come at you, choose to make the more productive choice. Don't, now you're aware of why your mind wants to say something, but now you're aware you can stop it in the tracks and go home and sit with it later. But in the moment, choose the right choice.
That's the voice of Tammy Vincent. Today on Living Big Mindfully, Tammy and I are taking a bit of a dive into childhood trauma and dysfunction. Yes, big topic. Tammy has truly risen from the ashes, and she shares her powerful journey through a painful, dysfunctional childhood, all the way to her healing, feeling more empowered, and now she's helping other survivors of childhood trauma. So listen in and get ready to be inspired. Tammy shares a little bit about her origin story, her background, and how she's been led to doing the work that she does today. And then we take the deeper dive and we talk about dysfunction, childhood dysfunction, and some of the things that may be blocking things like self-compassion, gratitude, and developing self-awareness, which is so important in the healing process. Tammy goes on to share some practical tips and strategies so we can really begin to recognize our own triggers, uncover those unhelpful beliefs, and begin to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. And of course, Tammy wraps it all up with some heartfelt sage advice. This episode with Tammy really resonated with me. She has, like I said, a really powerful story. And honestly, I don't know that there's one person on the planet that's got through childhood without some level of kind of dysfunction or trauma. So my hope is that these words, this conversation will really touch your heart today. So lastly, here's a couple of community announcements. Remember, download your free hiking guide. And the newest, if you haven't already, 12 ways to calm your nervous system. This little pocket guide is filled with simple, effective ways to reduce stress and anxiety. And if you're looking for a little bit more support, inspiration, and guidance, please check out one of my best-selling books, Never Too Late or You Are Limitless. And all of those can be found at katechampionauthor.com. Also, remember, we do have a community you can join. Again, another free resource. Jump on to the Back of the Pack Facebook group. There is always something fun going on there, and we'd love to have you. So check that out. And quick heads up, we are putting together a couple of courses, again, all designed to support and inspire you to live longer, stronger, and healthier lives. As always, I thank you. I support you. I am here for you. I hope you enjoy the show today. Here's Tammy. Hi, Tammy. How are you today?
I am doing great, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is Tammy Vincent. We're going to take a deep dive into some juicy topics today. So welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about you and your background. I really want to hear about your story, your background and your story. Yeah.
So I was born in Virginia, moved all over the place. My dad was military. Unfortunately, I had two alcoholic parents. So I grew up in a little bit of chaos. Well, a lot of chaos. Let's put it that way. So it was very tumultuous. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of abuse, mental, physical. My mom she did a lot of drugs as well. So I ended up into the mix of that with her drug dealers. And it was just pretty bad. And I never asked for help, obviously, because I didn't know there was help. I only had really one friend in grade school in the earlier years. And her parents partied with my parents. So I thought everything that we did together was completely normal. And then I went through some worse times in the high school years. I did get very into numbing my own pain by drinking. I started at a very young age. I started actually when I was 5, pouring drinks for my dad and drinking with him, which is kind of weird now that I think about it. But after high school, it was just I just went through the motions. I was just surviving, literally on survival mode my whole life. But I did what I thought was the next best steps. I was the perfect high school student. I I didn't like to go to school. I liked to go somewhere and sleep during the day, but I did go to school, graduated, went to college, graduated, and then was getting ready to have my first child and realized I was missing some of the very biggest concepts in life, like how to parent, how to be parented, how to have unconditional love for somebody, because I didn't know what that even meant. So I started going into this journey of, I got to figure this out. And through, back then they didn't have the internet. That was back in the 90s, and there was no Googling this and that. So I would just go to the library and sit down and pour through books after books after books after books and read anything I could get my hands on, whether it was suicide or depression or alcoholism or drug addiction or whatever it was. And in that, I read a lot about mindset and a lot about the brain and how the brain works. And it just really it made me realize I need help in a big, bad way. So I started going to therapy, and I went to therapy, like traditional, what you think of therapy as traditional talk therapy. And it was good, but I always just thought there was more. Like, it was like, there's more to this. Like, we're dealing with the right here, right now. And I feel like I need to deal with what happened in the past, which is obviously what I needed to do. So after, all of these tools and tricks and, learning all of these different modalities of, EFT tapping and hypnosis and all of this stuff, I was, I kept going through life though, just getting jobs and doing whatever I had to do. Then at that point I had 3 kids. So it was like teaching and stay at home and a combination of all those different things. And then it wasn't until just about 5 years ago when I lost a business with COVID that I was like, okay, I'm going to take all these tools and I'm going to use them to help other people, because it shouldn't take 25, 30 years to get to some pretty good transformation. It literally can happen almost immediately, but I didn't know that. I had to literally throw every single thing at the wall and see what would stick. And it was just trial and error. So now I feel like between my lived experience and the fact that I totally get it, like I've been through 6 years of inner child work, but I've also been through, 8 years of ACA, which is adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. So I've got a great combination, and I thought, I'm going to do something with this. These people shouldn't have to suffer. so that's really, in a nutshell, that's the shortened version of a really long life.
Right. I can imagine. I was thinking about, I know that's the highlights, right? Those are the cliff notes. Are there some, I understand and I connect with, sometimes they're just pivotal moments in people's lives, right? When you're kind of chugging along with, and something happens, right? And usually it's pretty big, usually it's pretty pivotal. What are a couple of those pivotal moments for you where you really got that kind of, hit on the forehead or the slap in the face and said, okay, I'm really going to do something different here? Tell me about a couple of those.
One was when I was 16 and was at my mother's house. My father had sent me to go live with my mother. They had been divorced for a couple years, and she lived up in Massachusetts, and he had sent me to go live there. And it was the most unsafe situation a kid could possibly be in. I was not being fed. I was not being given money to buy food. I was stealing her joints and selling them for $5 at school to try to buy lunch. I was running to the grocery store. And at one point, she thought it was okay for me to pay her drug debts with her drug dealers. And that was kind of my breaking point. And I actually considered taking her life because I thought that was the answer. And then I realized that's not the answer. And so I did have a suicide attempt, because at that point I was like, who am I, to take my mother's life? So I did have a suicide attempt. And that's when I realized, like, if I don't do something, I'm going to die. I knew at that point that something had to give. And unfortunately, I packed up. I had hit like that acceptance stage where I accepted that something had to change. But all I did was really change my situation. So I moved back to New Jersey to live with my dad. And then it was literally like 8 more years. But I, at that point, realized at least, okay, my life is not, no, I knew it wasn't normal, but I still didn't know what to do. It was when I was pregnant with my first son. And have you ever read that book, Love You Forever?
Mm.
It's like
Yeah.
that a book about an unconditional love between a mother and her son, and she's rocking him back and forth, and they're going through the stages of life, and she continues to love him. And that was when it hit me because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I just don't. I mean, it was like a 2x4 to the side of the head. It was so blatantly like I have to change if I want to be a good mother, be a good person, take back control of my life, which I was completely out of control. That was really the moment.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And yeah, I mean, I really kind of connecting with what you're saying and holding that tiny infant, right? And you're not wanting that for them, right? You want something, all the hopes and dreams, but you want something completely different for this innocent little human, right? That you're holding in your arms, and that can be a huge epiphany. So
Yeah,
powerful.
it really was. And I remember the first time it was the very first therapist that I went to, and God love her, because I remember we were talking and it was exactly what I pictured going to therapy. I had avoided it my whole life. But she said to me, well, how does that make you feel about something? And I was like, feel? I don't even feel. And she just smiled and she looked at me and she said, then that's a great place to start. And I was like, oh, like it was like just these little moments where my heart just melted. I was like, okay, I got this. Like I literally got this. When that happened, with the aha moment, I didn't know if I was even capable of unconditional love, which I knew I had to give this child. And so I was like, well, okay, Tammy, come on, think. I'm like, how can we test this? So I went out and bought a puppy. And I was like,
Okay.
if, who's not capable of loving an 8-week-old puppy? So I was like, if I can love this puppy, then at least I know maybe I could learn. So I used the 9 months I was pregnant or 8 months I was pregnant with a brand new puppy, learning unconditional love, honestly.
Love that. I love that. And as you're talking, like, so again, I do a lot of inner work. I'm just talking, like, so you're learning, right? You're learning to connect with this heart space, right? And love this little puppy. And I'm really hoping that some of that is kind of soaking into you, right? And really opening your heart and beginning to love yourself, right? Because
And
I think that just making my heart melt right now, thinking about
yep,
that.
because I mean, as I was holding this puppy, and I remember telling her, and I was like, I called her Doc Joanne, but I was like, Joanne, I was like, this is amazing. Like this puppy, like something open. It was exactly what happened. It was like, it's warmth. Like I was being wrapped in warmth. And I was like, okay, this is what it feels like. Cause I didn't have a memory of hugging my mother, not one.
Right.
So, so it was like, I knew like, and then that's when she said to me, of course, now we're going to get through this, but this is how you should feel towards yourself. And I was
This
like,
is
I don't even feel like this is like a new feeling. Like, I'm like, just baby steps. Like, I love this puppy. I'm good. Like, I'm good right now, you know? And it was,
Yeah,
yeah, it's years and years and years of just learning. And that's one of my biggest messages to people is, you can't pour from an empty cup. So the self-compassion is so vitally important. So
yeah.
vitally important.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about kind of self-compassion and help people, listeners, understand what that is, what that isn't, right? Because I mean, self-compassion is one thing, but self-compassion out of control is a whole mess, right? So let's
Yes.
talk about that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
No, that's fine. So I didn't, you grow up and a lot of people go through trauma when they're children. A lot of people are neglected and abused, and it doesn't have to be this big T trauma. It can be so small, but your mind is just so fragile at a young age, and it just absorbs all of this stuff. And so all of it gets stuck. I mean, it gets stuck in you as these negative feelings. So a good example I give to people is my mother told me every day of my life that I shouldn't have been born. She wished I had never been born. She hated me. She never loved me, blah, 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 blah. And yes, that had like this ingrained, like it was ingrained. I am not lovable, period, because of my mother and my father. And my father did love me very much. He was an alcoholic, but I don't think he really knew how to show that. But I believe he did. but you have this ingrained feeling of just, I'm just not lovable. So if my mother and my father don't love me, how could I possibly love myself? But then you have someone who literally, I had a friend, or she was a client and a friend, but she never had that bad big T trauma of being berated and belittled and everything else. Literally, she got left at school a couple days because I think her mother had gotten a new job or something, and she was late to pick her up. And her best friend said to her in first grade, "Your mother must not love you. She didn't come to pick you up." That literally had the same lasting effect on her as me having to hear it verbally from the source for years. So I point that out because some people will say, "Oh, it wasn't so bad. I had a great childhood. I had this, I had that." But it only takes one moment in a child's mind to ingrain something so deeply that it stays there, and it literally dictates the rest of their life. And so, yeah, learning to be self-compassionate, it starts small. It starts just, first of all, being aware of how you treat yourself. Because everybody has that, you drop something and you're like, oh, your initial reaction is, "I'm so dumb." Like that was literally, I could do something so small and so insignificant, but I immediately would think to myself, "Oh, I'm so dumb." And that like snowballs into, I can't do anything right. And it all comes back to, I'm just not good. So literally it's the first step, I feel like, is you have to just be aware of how you do feel about yourself.
Yeah. But that's hard for people, right? I mean, again, I'm a therapist, right? So I know that some thinking for many people feels like, well, that's just me. Well, that's just me. That's just the way I am. It's just, right, this acceptance that this is just me. But when you can kind of begin to rise above the thinking, and then you can begin to see the thoughts and see the stories, then you can begin to see that, okay, that isn't me. That's a part of me. It's a voice. It's that inner critic, whatever. So how do you help somebody step back and see that thinking and start to develop that self-awareness?
I do a lot of inner child work with people. And so I literally get them to go back to the point where they are 4 or 5 or 6 and make them feel lovable. Because, like you said, you have to step out of that, out of what's right here, and step out and be able to see the big picture. So I kind of look at that as, you have to get above your conscious level and you have to reach your subconscious, which is where the deep thinking and the feelings are. I mean, I love positive affirmations. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But I feel like at one point I could have said, "I love you. You are worthy. You are good. You are amazing." I could have been hypnotized and said it. And until I really got there, that was great. And I could do it all day long. But when the rubber hit the road and I had to make a split decision, it was still based on that inner feeling of not loving myself or not being lovable. So it was my subconscious reaching out and just reacting. And I was completely reactive. So I feel like with myself, and what worked for me and what I do with a lot of my clients is I do go back and we do love and reparent that younger child. Because you got to get it to believe that it is truly, truly worthy, not just superficially. So every time, like I said, it's all awareness. So when you snap at something or somebody, or you say something that doesn't and you think to yourself, "Ooh, that's not me." Okay, well, there's your first awareness. So it's not me. So why did you do that? So it's like literally asking yourself 7 to 8 steps of why, and keep going back and going back and going back until you find out why. Then you can kind of sit with that. Yeah. But you also need to just, in every situation, don't beat yourself up. Because as long as you keep the self-critic and you keep allowing yourself to agree with the self-critic or the inner critic or whatever you want to call that, you're never going to love yourself fully. You have to question it, and question it pretty harshly.
Yeah. So I'd love to give like kind of practical examples for people listening. So let's, again, it sounds like we're pretty aligned about some of the work that we do, in this arena. So for me, like when I'm trying to help somebody increase their self-awareness, it is that work, right? It's trying to get above the thinking and then helping them like notice, right, what's coming up during the day, right? So if you're in traffic, road rage is a big one, right? So, somebody cuts you off and then this person behind the wheel gets this whoosh, like this whoosh of emotion. It's heat in the body and it's racing heart and it's like, I'm going to get them. And then they come into the office and they share that with me. And then it's like, okay, let's take a moment, let's close our eyes, let's go inside, let's take a breath. Like, and then the questions start, right? Okay, what was that? What was that about for you? I forget the guy that cut them off in traffic, right? But what is that about for you? What came up for you? What are you thinking, feeling as we kind of dig into that? So that's kind of my process. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your process.
That's actually very much my process. But one of the things that I do also in every person that I ever deal with is I try to really instill in them an attitude of gratitude, which I know is crazy. But when you start every day, so I love the example that you used of getting cut off because my husband has like the worst road rage. So I have just practiced for years. I wake up in the morning and I say, thank you for 5 things that came at me, like 5 things that I can think of that I'm thankful for and be grateful for. And then if something like just happened. I love that you brought this up. And he was like, oh, rah, 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 this guy cut him off. And he's like, why? I was like, you get so out of control when someone like, what is it with you and road rage? He goes, it just makes me so angry. He's like, why don't you get mad? I'm like, because you know what I thought to myself? I thought to myself, well, thank goodness I'm not in such a big hurry that I need to cut someone off. Like my brain jumps to that. Why is it better for me? Like, why don't I? And what am I thankful for in that situation? And that took a long time of training my brain to do that. But that's what I do. If someone, if I see somebody does do something, what I consider dumb or something that would probably upset other people, I'm just like, oh, well, thank goodness I have the sense not to do that. Whatever it is, I just always jump back with myself with that. And of course, that is like the initial reaction, so that your initial reaction doesn't come so harshly. Now, that might not help in your, in like a situation, because I don't know. I mean, it did help. It will help somebody, but like now they're never going to bring that up to you. They're never going to say, I was so mad. And, because you still have to deal with that. You still have to go, okay, why? So then it's just, okay, and that's why I say when I start working with people, I'm like, get one of those little tiny spiral books. And every time you have some kind of emotion, and it doesn't matter what it is, just write it down. So then later you can sit and be curious, and don't beat yourself up. Just be curious, because that is how you will grow.
Yeah. And for me, curiosity and self-compassion, they are like the dream team, right? I mean, you have to have both, right? You have to have the self-compassion, right? And the kind of curiosity, which again is so difficult for people, because people have, me included, right? We all have very judgmental, critical parts. I don't think we can get through childhood, right? With the school system and the family system and the sports and blah, blah, blah. I don't know one person that's got unscathed through childhood, right?
No.
So we really have to work on these critical, judgmental parts, get them to stay back and allow that kind of self-compassion, and the gratitude. I love that. Maybe that's the 3-legged stool, right? Self-compassion, that curiosity, and then the gratitude, right? That's a powerful combination.
It really is. And the gratitude is, I think, I say that it's what really, when I wasn't a believer for a long time, because I thought my God had given up on me. But when someone said to me, just start thanking him for something every day, that was like such a wake up call. And I'm like, thanking him, like, yeah. And that's what got me back into really believing in the power of just what you think about, you bring about, and that there's somebody bigger than you. It's out of my control. And it all kind of came together. But for some reason, the gratitude part really, really helped me a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. I love that. Say what you think about, you bring about, right? I mean, that is really how powerful our thoughts are, right? Yeah, they are our energy that's going to set our compass, right? For the day, the week, the month, the year, the lifetime, right? So we really have to really, this is really serious work, right? This is really
Right.
serious stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like you said, it takes a long time to train your mind because you've been so ingrained and you're working off that subconscious initial gut reaction. And
Yeah.
I mention it in a lot of my podcasts about that quick question to just ask yourself if you, because a lot of people go, oh, I went through a lot of healing, I'm healed. We're never fully, it's a journey. Like life
Uh,
continues to throw things at us that are going to unlayer more layers and open up more wounds. And that's just how life works. So there is no
yeah.
stops, like there's no ending. There's no like pot at the end of the rainbow where you go, oh yeah, everything's perfect now. It's, but if
That's
you,
right.
yeah, if you love I mean, I used to despise the work that you had to do to quote unquote
Mm,
heal. The really thinking back to why something, well, I'm like, I don't want to remember that. Well, you don't have to relive it. You just have to acknowledge it and give it a name and admit it happened, and then know that you can't control the past. So now let's figure out what that did for us. Let's be curious, figure out what it did to us so we can learn from it so we can have better experiences going forward.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned this, some quick questions, right? Some quick questions you encourage the people you work with. So give listeners an example of maybe, I don't know, two or three of those quick, pointed kind of questions. Since they have this flash of emotion come up, they're trying to figure out with the why. Give us a couple of concrete kind of questions that somebody might run through their minds.
Well, first one is, why did I react that way? And it's going to take 7 whys, because let's say someone cuts you off. Well, why did I react that way? Well, because it made me mad. Well, why did it make me mad? Because he almost hit me. Well, what would have happened if he hit me? Like, well, that would have messed up my day. And you literally can go back all the way. But the one question, like when I was saying quick questions, I like to um you have to go back. But one of the questions, especially when you're wondering, like, did that bother me, or should it bother me, or why did it bother me, is go back to like root things. Um, like if you react at somebody and you jump at them, you, I guess I'm trying to say that I try to get people to go all the way back to see if they're even at a place where curiosity should be explored, where things should be explored, or, because a lot of people will say when we're doing positive affirmations, oh, I am 100% better. I know I feel good. I went through all this. I inner child worked. I journal. I do all this. And I heard from a psychologist one time, and I absolutely love it. And I can't remember the name, but they said to picture yourself eating your favorite food or your favorite something, listening to your favorite music. And how does that make you feel? Well, it makes you warm and fuzzy and, it makes you feel good, right? If you picture eating your favorite pizza or whatever it is. Now ask yourself and seriously ask yourself, how do I feel when I say I deserve all good things? And that's
Mm,
because if you are not quite there and you still have some curiosity and work to do on loving yourself, you'll get a little pit in your stomach. You'll get a little clench of your jaw. Your back will tighten up. Something physical will happen to you if you don't truly believe it. And I always say that is when I heard that, it was like, wow, that was the quickest one liner to go, am I there? Do I still need some work? So
yeah. Yeah.
whoever said that was
So much
brilliant.
is coming up for me right now. Wow. Yeah. So much is coming up for me. I work a lot with people in early recovery, and, there's a massive amount of work to do about self-compassion and self-love. And literally last week, trying to help somebody kind of put their hand on their heart and send themselves some self-compassion. They literally couldn't do it. They literally heartbreaking. I mean, seriously heartbreaking. This young man has been through so much, but just couldn't yet. You'll get there. Have that kind of self-compassion for himself. But that is a powerful question. Powerful
Isn't that
question.
great? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
kudos to whoever it was. And I need to find out who it was because I quote this all the time and use it with every client. And I always say, this is not my idea. I stole this one, but by golly, it's a great,
Yeah.
it's a great starting point to kind of see, because some people can't even say the words to start thinking about it.
Right. So uncomfortable, so foreign, they're so undeserving, right? All these stories. Again, it's heartbreaking, really. Heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I love that. All right. So we've got lots of strategies for listeners. Anything else you want to add or share today before I ask you the sage advice question?
No, I mean, I think we hit on a lot, and I think the self-compassion needs to be hit on way more. Sometimes it doesn't even come into a conversation. And I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, oh, wow, why would we not do that? And I think we hit on a lot of the big ones that I really, truly believe in is giving yourself some grace, don't being so hard on yourself. It's just, it doesn't get you anywhere. And then the only other thing that I really stress with, especially the people that I talk to, is that once you are aware, once you're sitting in front of me, then there's problems and you are aware. So as you become aware, know that now everything is in your court and everything is a choice. So that's a big one, because a lot of people are like, it gets kind of a little bit of kickback sometimes, but I tell people you're going to have an abundance of emotions every single day. Choose for them to be good. When you get, when things come at you, choose to make the more productive choice. Don't, now you're aware of why your mind wants to say something, but now you're aware, you can stop it in the tracks and go home and sit with it later. But in the moment, choose the right choice.
I love that. And I also really, honestly, I really, really respect that you preface that with the self-awareness first, because I think sometimes that's missed, right? Sometimes people hear, oh, just make the right choice, make the right choice, make the right choice. But that there's a step in between recovery, right? There's a step in between, or healing. But I mean, they're both the same thing.
Right.
There's a step in between, right? That, the way we've been kind of wired, right? And that self-awareness, and then we get to make some choices. We have to take responsibility, because without the self-awareness, we're just on automatic pilot, right? We're just like a dog being
there's
led
nobody
around
to
by the
blame.
lead.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's no blame in it. You are doing exactly what your mind was taught to do in your situation. And now you have to reteach your mind. But once you know, like when you don't know, and that's what I always say, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why there are therapists and coaches, and there's all these people out there, because a lot of us have been there.
Yeah.
That
self-awareness is really key. And then you get to make choices and take responsibility, right? Yeah. Love that.
Absolutely.
What would be, for listeners, one piece of sage advice? It could be anything, it doesn't have to be necessarily recovery related, that you might give to people, one thing that you do that helps you live intentionally.
One thing that is, everything that happens to me in the world, I look at it as it's happening for me and not to me. I literally learned from everything. I use every single situation, good, bad, or ugly, to grow. And and I think that takes a lot of, it makes you think a lot, but in thinking, and you grow and move forward, but you just live your life as a victor and not a victim. It's happening for you. It's happening to teach you something or to move you to something different. So that would be my piece of advice.
Powerful, really powerful. What an incredible conversation today, Tammy. Thank you so much for sharing and being so open, and really, really helping. This helps a lot of people. Where can people reach out to you? Where, if they want to find you or connect?
Probably the easiest thing is just to go to my website, which is just my name, tammyvincent.com, because you can grab a free course on there. You can shoot a message to just have a coffee chat with me. It doesn't cost anything. I love to chat with you about whatever. I have links to my podcast on there, so you can learn some tips and tricks in my podcast. And pretty much I house everything there. So it's a one-stop shop, and short of my social media, but honestly, everything's in my website.
Yeah, beautiful. So just to shout out the podcast name, because I did have a listen to a couple of episodes. I do recommend it. It's pretty good. So what's the podcast?
Okay, the name of the podcast is Adult Child of Dysfunction, and it's all kinds of stories. So it's just Adult Child of Dysfunction. All kinds of stories on there, but all of hope and healing. I don't have anybody on there that is not having something positive to say, because I think we all need positivity in our world.
Absolutely. And I love that title because, I mean, we can all qualify for that. We are all adults of some kind of dysfunction, let's face it, right? To certain degrees, right? We are all
absolutely
all in that boat. So, yeah. So, Tammy, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I will just treasure this conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I love it. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your time. I love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Remember to grab your free hiking guide, and please take a quick moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much. Take care. Until next time. Hey, me again. Just a reminder, this podcast should not be considered professional advice. It's also not a substitute for mental, physical, or any other healthcare-related treatment. For any questions about your condition and or concerns, please contact a fully licensed healthcare professional. Thank you.